Okay, this is a Coleman AT125UT ATV kids four-wheeler. I picked this one up at Gander Outdoors. Tractor Supply had them, but they sold out. It's December of 2020, and I figured there's not a lot of videos out here for these things, so I figured I'd just show what they look like when you unbox them and put them together. It is pretty heavy. Alright, so it comes in basically a steel crate made out of angle iron, and it's pretty thick stuff. I'd probably say it's 1mm angle iron, obviously from China, but a little crunched up, looks like. Shipping damage, but we'll see. Hopefully nothing, this is the first time looking at it. Greasable joints. Looks pretty good. It's fastened into the shipping crate. This model has disc brakes on it. I think the other Teo, I think it's Teo, have drum brakes on the front. All smushed together here. Sort of what I expected. Looks good. AT125UT. A little better packaging. Ah, this is the front bumper there. Okay. And this is bent, but not too bad. So hopefully everything survived. Handlebars, so some assembly required, and I don't know if I'm supposed to cut this thing apart or what. Maybe I'll just start pulling parts out of the top and see what happens. These look like they're welded in. These braces here, they are welded in. So I'll have to figure out how to get this thing apart and get it out of the crate. More to come. Alright, a little bit of an update here. I ended up getting a cold, so this is a couple days later than my first video. My voice probably isn't 100%, but out here trying to get this thing apart. So far I haven't found any instructions. Maybe they're in a box of parts over here. I did pull most of the stuff out of the top and through the sides. A lot of stuff is held on with these little twisty ties. It's almost like house wiring. Anyhow, still chipping away at it. Looks like I got a bolt to take out here. There's a handful of bolts. This thing's held in with bolts to the crate in various locations here. Here's the Tao or Teo Motorsports badge. Looks pretty good. Just looking at the parts that are coming off of it, the construction is almost better than what I expected, really. Everything looks appropriate. This is the back rack, and it's just impressive how much steel is on it. And all looks pretty good. So we'll see how it goes together. Again, I haven't seen the assembly instructions. I sort of question these plastic things on here. The tires are junky, which is sort of comical. I don't think you'd have that on a Polaris, but they look pretty good. Everything looks pretty good. So I noticed one of these, the bead is popped way off, so I don't think I'll have any problem sealing it up, but we'll see how it goes. Picture of it in the crate. Still sort of wondering how I'm going to fit this all out, but they got it in somehow, unless they welded it afterwards, and I don't think they would have done that. So we'll see. I'll pull all the bolts out, and we'll see what the next, see how it goes, see how it comes out of here. Okay, so important note, I just discovered that, well, obviously you can see the cages off of it. In each corner there's a fastener with a nut on the backside, and there's 4 of them, 1 on each corner. I guess 6 if you include these vertical braces. But you take those bolts out, and the whole cage just pops right off. And had I known that, probably taking it off first would have been the best idea. These are sort of cool. The way they've got this axle mounted in here is actually pretty nice for shipping, anyhow. Got little clamps that go over that, and the screws hold it all together, so the whole thing's bolted in pretty nice. Alright, so now I should be able to pluck it up out of there and see if I can get this thing put together. Alright, so I got this small box of parts. I assume that's what it was when I pulled it all apart, but looks like it comes with, I'm assuming these are axle end covers or rubber pieces. Looks like the battery here, gel battery, it was upside down, so I assume that's not a problem, but it's got some liquid on it. Not sure what that is. Might be oil. Probably straps for the battery. This feels like a small toolkit. Owner's manual. See if it's in China English. Looks pretty good so far. We'll figure it out. Being that this is a Coleman, I'm assuming that they've got some engineering staff from Coleman that at least looks this stuff over and makes sure it makes sense for U.S. citizens. And interesting thing in here, of all things, they include a tire pressure gauge, one of the old mechanical ones. CD for safety video, some brackets, a bunch of bolts, and yeah, that's about it. So I guess we'll start reading the instructions and seeing what this thing does here. Alright, so the first sort of what I would consider the first Chinese thing that I have found, or the first, I don't know, I would say less than quality aspect of this would be the handlebar mount, which is the first piece I'm really technically working on. First off, here are the fasteners. I assume these are the fasteners. Here's the instructions. Yeah, so M10 by 30 bolts. You can see they got a flange on the fastener. I just dropped the handlebar mount. Anyhow, so here's the handlebar mount, and there's 4 of these, which is fine. All 4 of them have counterbores in them, so you would assume there'd be like a socket head cap screw that would fit down in there, but instead the fastener sits on top of this flange, and there's really no functional need for that counterbore in there. And if there were a functional need for the counterbore, like if you wanted to go put a socket head cap screw in it, I don't think you could, because the counterbore center line to the hole center line is way off. Way off. It's like that on each one. So hopefully maybe you can see that. It's kind of hard to see. But the holes are not concentric, essentially. And that's like that on every one of these. So we'll get it put together. The other thing I noticed is that the fasteners are obviously used. So maybe they use these during the assembly process and zip them back out. And that's fine, no big deal. But the fasteners, all of these for the steering head, have been previously installed. So moving on. Alright, so I got everything loose right now, but here is how I assembled the front. I put the bolts in as indicated in the drawing here. 4 bolts. The only thing that was a little bit confusing was it says there's 4 washers. Obviously you have 4 bolts, but then you only have 2 lock nuts and 2 lock washers. Now you've got these 2 fasteners here, and that's for this top console, and those are right there. But those were already installed. You just got to back them out and then put this console in. This bottom plate down here, it's threaded. So you can see, maybe, you can see the fasteners are hanging out a little ways. I suppose there's enough room to fit a nut on there, but there's no way you're going to be able to fit a nut and a washer and possibly a lock washer. I assume because these have flanges on them that I didn't need to put the washer on the top side, and I also think it would look a little bit goofy if you had a washer sitting there on top of a flanged fastener. So that's how I put this together. I might be coming back to revisit this after I get all the fasteners in and just see what I've got. But this might just be a blue Loctite type of event. Maybe I'll put a lock washer on these two longer fasteners. But the instructions don't indicate where the flat washers are supposed to go or where the lock washers are supposed to go. So that is that. One other observation on the console installation of the handlebars and everything is this is the throttle cable here. And obviously when you're turning the wheel or turning the handlebars, you don't want it to get pulled and incidentally accelerate the vehicle. So the manual shows, this is from the rider's position, the manual shows the cable going out in front of the console. I try to route it that way, but if you do so, it's so tight that it just didn't seem like it was correct. So I routed it on this side of the console, and you probably could even go right through here, but anyhow, for now I've got it routed on the inside or close to the rider. We'll see how it goes when I get the whole thing done. The next step is handlebar assembly. And from what I can tell, it's mostly done. It says here to plug the black and green wires into the right and left brake assemblies and install the left brake assembly using some fasteners. But as far as I can tell, everything's done. The only thing I would say is, man, there's a ton of wiring, extra length here. I mean, look at that. So we'll have to find a way to get that curled up and tucked in. Same with these here. I believe what it's referring to is plugging these in right here, which were already plugged in. I just pushed them on, made sure they were in. And same thing on this side. There's a couple little wires here. Push those on. Something I did notice is that this assembly here is a little bit loose. So I'm just going to go through and tighten everything up and make sure everything's good to go. But as far as I can tell, that step is pretty much done for you from the factory. Getting the handlebar protectors installed. So it comes with a couple small brackets. Those brackets are right here. Those mount to the handlebar, no big deal. Fit it pretty good. And then looks like there's a hole in the end of the handlebar and it's threaded. And then your handlebar or handlebar protector is fits up like this. It's going to be real close to the lever, so we'll finagle that around. I'm having trouble finding all the bolts for it. The bolt packages are not set up in a way where if you have kit A, B, or C, or any of that, you just get a bundle of bolts. And something else with the graphic arts here. This shows the end of the handlebar going through the hand protector, which is obviously an error. It does not do that. Couldn't do that. So I think it just mounts up right to the end there. It fits in through a fastener, which I'll have to find. But that's a little bit misleading how they've got it put in there. Alright, it does look like I did get shorted 2 fasteners that fit into the end of these bars right here. So I'm just going to leave those hanging loose. and really everything's kind of loose until I get everything put together. Then I'll come back and tighten everything up, put some blue Loctite on a few things, but a little disappointed. I'll get the rest of this put back, put together, and I'll see if I've got any extras left over, extra fasteners. But otherwise, that pretty well concludes the top end of this build here. The rest of it's going to be putting the wheels and tie rods and brakes and so forth together. So the next step per the instructions goes from handlebar and hand protector assembly, which we just went over, to tie rod installation. And it just pretty much covers installing the tie rod. Attach the tie rod in, secure the tie rod, insert the cotter pins, whatever. However, it doesn't make much sense to put the tie rod in when you don't even have the spindle connected. And there's no instruction for connecting the spindle. The next step after tie rod is putting the rims together. So, and it's pretty close to being about done. Just make sure. Yeah. So, just be aware that you got to put the, at least what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to put the spindles on prior to installing the tie rod. Quick tip on these, I'm putting the spindle in. With these ball joints, they have a hole here that lines up with your castle nut. When I first put this thing together, the hole was facing the spindle, making it really challenging to get the cotter pin in and bent over. I kind of fought it on the bottom one. I might take that back apart. It's in, but it's whatever. So the better thing to do would be before you start, make sure this hole is sort of running front to back on the four-wheeler. And that way when you go to put it in the caliper, or in the spindle, try to do this with one hand. There we go. That way you can get access to it and slide it right through. And not have any problem with getting to the backside. So anyhow, quick tip. Alright, when I had the spindle on there, this unit has disc brakes. This clip, these little tabs on this clip that keep the boot on, are pretty close to the disc. And if this gets compressed in any way, in other words, if there's a bunch of dirt, you're going through mud, this could get compressed and spin around or either tear the boot or come dislodged. So what I'm going to do is flick this toward the inside of the four-wheeler so it's a little more protected. I got to get it to sit down there, but you get the idea. And the top's not such a big deal. It's kind of out of the way already. But anyhow, just something else to think about. So you're going to want to make sure these ball joints, especially the upper, is angled the correct way. And basically all you have to do is turn one of these nuts. But right now you can see it's aimed kind of in the wrong direction. So you just come up here and I think you can spin this. Give me just a second. Yeah. If you take your, I just got an adjustable here, but if you take your wrench, just torque on it a little bit, it'll kind of come around. The other thing while I'm here, this, man, I spent a lot of time on this on the other side. These castle nuts with this cotter pin, if you look, there's a ledge right. Alright, so on this topic of the spindles again, with these cotter pins, trying to get them through is pretty tough. There's a ridge right here in the casting for the spindle, and if you, as you're tightening this nut, if this stud here turns a little bit, it makes it very, very difficult to get the cotter pin if your hole is sort of in line with this. I mean, it's very close. It's kind of hard to see, but it's very close to the nut. You can't get the cotter pin in, so you just got to make sure you have your alignment correct before you start. And like I mentioned, just tweak your ball joint in the correct orientation. Alright, this is exactly what I was talking about. So I got this top knuckle put together, but you got to put the cotter pin on, which, where am I at? There we go. And it'll go through, but because of this ridge right here, you can't curl it around. You can't fit anything back there to curl it around the nut, so I've got to take this back apart and start over. So something to be mindful of.